Our next story begins with a stunning video. It has been released by the United States. This is what happened on Tuesday over the Black Sea. What you see is a Russian Su-27 fighter jet approaching the American MQ-9 drone. The Russian jet is releasing aviation fuel in the drone's path, and it's releasing a lot of it. At some point, the drone's camera stops working. This is dramatic footage for the dramatic times we live in. We've all heard tales from the Cold War, a dangerous era of tensions between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. They came very close to an actual all-out war. There were quite a few close nuclear calls too. There were times when both sides came close to pushing the nuclear button. The biggest example is the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Today, the Soviet Union does not exist, but Russia does. And Russia is pitted against the United States. There is high tension. A Russian jet striking down an American drone is a big deal. Things escalated soon after. British and German fighter jets were scrambled to intercept a Russian aircraft. This was close to Estonia's airspace. Reports say a Russian military aircraft was seen flying close to Estonia's airspace. Now, Estonia is a NATO member state, and NATO's rules are quite clear on this. If one member is threatened or attacked, the alliance responds as one. So as the action shifted near Estonia, British and German jets scrambled in response. They intercepted the Russian aircraft. Reports say the Russian aircraft failed to communicate with Estonia's air traffic controller. And such interceptions are not unprecedented. In fact, they happen all the time, about 400 times a year. You heard that right. NATO jets are involved in about 400 interceptions a year with Russian aircraft. That is more than one interception a day. So this one was not unusual. But it was serious given the context and the situation right now. There's a war raging on in Ukraine. Russia and America saw a mid-air collision. Even one step off the mark could lead to disaster. It seems the US and Russia are trying to avoid that. Their defense ministers spoke with each other. So did their military chiefs. The Russian defense minister told his American counterpart that American drone flights near Crimea's coast were provocative in nature and could lead to an escalation. In fact, let me quote from what he said. Russia had no interest in such a development, but will in future react in due proportion. This means Russia will not escalate this incident, but if it happens again, there will be an escalation. Back in Washington, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had something similar to say. Listen to this.
I won't speak for Minister Shoigu, nor will I get into the details of our discussion. I'll just reiterate that the United States will fly and operate wherever international law allows. Now, we take any potential for escalation very seriously, and that's why I believe it's important to keep the lines of communication open. I think it's really key that we're able to pick up the phone and engage each other.
Meanwhile, Russia is trying to retrieve the debris of the crashed American drone, and this may pose another challenge. Because remember what the drone was doing. It was gathering intelligence. It was on a reconnaissance mission. It was collecting intelligence for the US, possibly for it to be shared with Ukraine. Moscow would want to examine it. And even without the intelligence, the drone's wreckage could be useful to Moscow. Russia would be interested in the drone's technology, how it was built, what led to the crash, perhaps even its potential weaknesses. But recovering the debris will not be easy. This area where the drone fell has a depth of 4,000 to 5,000 feet. And before it crashed, the US is said to have wiped out all the data in it. So whatever intelligence was collected may have been removed before the crash. Yet Russia wants to try its luck. What about the US? Will the US also look for the debris? Highly unlikely. Recovering the remains would require the involvement of the American Navy. And the American Navy in the Black Sea, in the middle of Russia's war in Ukraine, would set off a chain reaction. If the drone crash did not escalate into a conflict, the US Navy's presence in the Black Sea definitely will. On to India now. It is making its presence felt in the global arms bazaar, not as a buyer. India is already the world's biggest defense buyer. This time we're talking about made-in-India weapons being sold in the international market. And India has been making strides. Another major deal could be finalized soon. Indonesia wants to buy the Brahmos missile. The negotiations are underway. The deal could be worth at least $200 million. The Brahmos is a supersonic cruise missile. It can be fired from land, airplanes, and even submarines. India developed it in collaboration with Russia. The Indian Defence Forces already have the Brahmos in their arsenal, and now India wants to use it to boost its defence exports. The Brahmos is an important component in that plan. The missile has generated a lot of interest in Southeast Asia in particular. Last year, India clinched its first deal. The Philippines bought the Brahmos. This deal was worth $375 million. It included 3 missile batteries, training for the operators, and a logistics support package. When will the Philippines get the Brahmos? The first deliveries are expected this year. Reports say Manila wants more. The Philippines is looking at procuring more Brahmos systems. And how will they use it? Reports say the Philippines wants to deploy the Brahmos on its shores. The plan is to use it as an anti-ship missile, meaning it can be used to take out enemy ships. And Indonesia has similar needs. After all, both of them have the same security challenge. It's called China. This is about the South China Sea. It is one of the biggest territorial disputes of our times. The region is rich in oil and gas. There are tons of fish. Trade worth over $3 trillion passes through these waters. China wants to control the entire South China Sea. But 5 other players stake claim to the islands and the waters: Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. They have competing and sometimes overlapping claims. China is getting serious about controlling this region. It now has the world's largest navy. It is building islands and airstrips. It is expanding its military presence in the South China Sea, and this poses a threat for other countries here. Countries like Indonesia and the Philippines. Now, the Philippines is involved in a direct dispute in the South China Sea. Indonesia is not. But it has interests in the same waters, and it wants to protect key shipping lanes. So both countries are ramping up their military procurements. They're investing in new weapons. In fact, I have some data. Indonesia's investment shot up to 69% in 2022. And the Philippines saw a rise of 40%. And some of this spending is set to come India's way. That is the biggest takeaway. Make in India in defense is finally taking off. New Delhi has set an ambitious goal. It wants to export $5 billion worth of arms by 2025. The Brahmos is just the beginning. It serves 2 purposes: meeting India's defense export goals and sending a message to China. India is arming like-minded partners against Chinese aggression. More countries in the region are interested. Reports say India is in talks with Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and Myanmar. The first 3 countries on this list are involved in the South China Sea dispute. So is this payback for the border provocation in the Himalayas? We'd say that's one way of looking at it.
An Indian becoming a UK PM.
Well, it's not like that we are going to get the Kohinoor back. But at least India is on its way to the top, huh?
But Gautam sir, there's actually not much to celebrate.
Why not? An Indian is ruling the UK.
Indian leaders in third countries often tend to overcompensate for their minority handicap.
Key.
For example, Sunak's Home Secretary of Indian origin, Suella Braverman, disapproved of India-UK free trade because it would encourage people immigrating to the UK, and the majority of whom were Indians. Structurally, India and UK have passed baggage, but still hasn't been resolved. And that is why,
Ladies and gentlemen, India needs to significantly temper its expectations from Rishi Sunak. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first-of-its-kind global show with an Indian perspective.
So, where are you investing?
Oh, China, it's just growing.
It's always been the manufacturing hub. Besides, India's struggling post-COVID.
Of course.
Sir, actually India's management of COVID has been much better. China's situation till date is unclear. After zero COVID lockdowns, China is gradually losing its supremacy as manufacturing leader. The country's share of global exports of footwear, furniture, or clothing accessories has fallen since 2016. Meanwhile, India has bounced back. So by the looks of it,
India could become the global manufacturing hub by 2030. Presenting Vantage with me, Palki Sharma, a first of its kind global show with an Indian perspective.